So, you get the best of images today. So, these are the Lewis chess pieces, and you can quickly identify which ones are the bishops, i.e. these ones, and then you struggle to work out who the queen and the king is. Go on then, which one's the king and which one's the queen?
The king is thinking.
That's the king, and that's the queen, is it?
No.
No.
I don't think they are.
That's the king,
That little one's the
and that's the queen.
The thinking
These
one.
are all queenies. And that there, if you notice,
Is a wizard.
is a no. That's a knight fighting his shield, and that there. Oh, hang on. Yeah, no. That's a rook fighting his shield. Sorry, made a mistake. And that's the knight over there on the horse. So the rook biting the shield, and the knight over there on the horse. Sorry for that little mistake.
Where's the pawn?
Oh, the pawns were very plain pieces. There's nothing wrong with having a moustache. I used to go in a fish and chip shop in Barry, and a woman serving fish and chips used to have a ginger moustache.
I know her. She's related to my sister-in-law. Because we were afraid she was going to come to the wedding because my brother had a ginger beard.
Is it the same one?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Well, there's only one woman with a ginger beard, isn't there? That's why she has
I'm hearing some stuff today. Do you know, this is just not going well. Right, okay, so the Archaeology of Games, I felt was going to be easy, but then some of the material I wanted I couldn't get hold of. And then I worked out, after looking at games in Central America and Egypt, and then Greece, and then Rome, and then Britain, and then in China, I thought, this is a bit too much. So I can't do it all. But these are Lewis chess pieces found in 1831 by complete accident. Now, there's a story I'm going to read out, the official story of the finding of the Lewis chess pieces. But there's another story. Mr. Sprout, and that's his name, Mr. Sprout MacLeod. And I'm not making this up now, it's actually Mr. Sprout MacLeod goes out one day, right, and he passes the side of a bit of an overhang, and then he thinks there's something unusual about that, and he looks in, and he sees little people looking out at him, and he starts talking to them, and he doesn't know whether these little people are fairies, or little sprites, or something. Anyway, he runs home to his missus, and he says to Mrs. MacLeod, he says, Mrs. MacLeod, I've seen some fairies in a little cabin. And she said, enough of your nonsense, you've been drinking again, you have, in a Welsh accent. You've been drinking again, you have. Proper religious woman, she is. Anyway, so go on, show me where these things are, you idiot. And he says, follow me, Mrs. MacLeod. Anyway, they go out. And he says, they're in here. And she says, look, you idiot. You've been drinking. They're chess pieces. And apparently that's the true story of the finding of the Lewis chess pieces. I did read about it on the internet 10 years ago. And I don't know if I was drunk at the time. But the man was actually called Mr. Sprout MacLeod. Honestly, that's true. You can look at my real notes. Anyway, they found 93 pieces altogether. Now, how many pieces are on the average chess set? 16 on each side. That's 32. So, in other words, sorry to have interrupted. I want to use my power of maths there. When they found these, they believed that they represented 5 sets of chess pieces, and some believe that they came all the way from Sweden.
They do look like that, don't they? Were they different colours? Did they have black and white, or were they?
We do think that they were painted white or red. Well, I'll be hooked. Yes. Yes.
What are they made of?
Oh no, some are from whalebone and others from ivory. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. Yeah, they are. Yeah, some are from. Yeah. Sorry, you called me out then. Some are from whalebone and others are from ivory. Yeah, walrus ivory actually. Walrus ivory. As you can see, it's said that the figures, even though they look quite comical, i.e. the gentleman over here biting his shield, they're meant to be very serious pieces indeed. A proper serious game of chess. Now, lots of things that can be said about games. Games are meant to be fun. Games can be used for gambling. Games can be used for military purposes. Or games can be used to pass your life away, to pass the moments. There are lots of different reasons why we've got these games, but they're wonderful figures, practically 1,000 years old. And there you go. There he is looking out at you with his good old sword there. Okay, bulgy eyes. Now that's one thing about the bulgy eyes. They said something specific about the bulgy eyes, and apparently they've compared the sword and the shield and some of the other things they're wearing with actually archaeology that they found, and they believe they're actually quite good representations of Swedish Vikings. Not sure about the bulgy eyes, but that might be another story. There are one or two images coming up that I've decided to put in there for Bill's benefit.
Are they rude?
No, they're Viking women today dressed up.
Oh, that's right.
They won't fall over.
They won't fall over, exactly.
Oh,
There's a Viking.
very
nice.
Exactly.
Lovely colour hair.
A Viking reenactor. Now, lots of things that can be said about this Viking woman. But one thing that can be said is that the Viking women held the purse strings of Viking society. We have now got evidence. Not only were they warriors, you've got one or two Viking women that were generals and leaders of their society. So when you've got women that are controlling society, the men haven't got a chance. And this is what we're actually seeing in the archaeology, not just in the written work, but we're in the archaeology. And the reason why I've gone down this avenue is because games are associated, when they're placed into burials, games are associated with men, and men being able to learn military tactics. But the strange thing is, we started to find board games in the burials of women. And that is the angle where we've gone. So you could think of this woman as being a normal everyday lady within a village. And this next image, a woman that I don't think you would mess with in a dark alley. It might be slightly exaggerated, but it's portraying a Viking warrior woman. That sort of Viking image. I prefer the earlier one, but you've obviously got the sword, and the sword would be the status symbol of a woman as a warrior. And as I've said many times before, outside, whatever gender you are, whether you've got breasts or whether you've got something else, right? When you're outside, it doesn't matter what sex you are, you're classed as a man. You could be the most prettiest woman ever, but you're classed as a man outside. And the reverse is inside. If a man is inside, he's classed as a woman.
You mean it's inside a house?
Yes, doing work inside. If you're classed outside as male, inside you're classed as female. Okay? And that's basically Viking society. So if you are outside as a woman, you could be a warrior as much as you could be a king. And inside, a man could be a weaver as much as somebody who's going to be doing the cooking. So that's Viking Society. It's quite simple. There's none of this hermaphrodites and he, she's and gays and straights and all that nonsense, right? There's just one rule. Outside masculine, inside feminine. That's it. You don't need...
If they're in there together, they're two women then.
If a man and a woman's working inside, right, they're classed as both female because they're doing female jobs. Let's not do the inside bit. If you go outside and you're on a boat, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a shield and a sword, and you're a woman. You're a man.
They'll expect you to fight.
You're a man. You're classed as a man. That's a man's role. To plough a field, whether you're a male or female, that's a man's role. If you're a woman ploughing a field, you're a man.
But if they were all out there dressed like that, who was looking after the kids?
If a man's looking after the kids, he's classed as a woman because he's indoors. He's doing a feminine role.
Out there fighting, I mean,
there would always be people. There would always be people behind looking after children. You're not just going to leave the children in a pit like they did in Peru. Children in Peru, right? In Inca society, that was also something else weird, right? Children in the daytime would be put in a hole in the ground, right? A square hole in the ground, right? That's where a child would be. Child is to be in the ground. And that's why lots of children are found when there's a landslide or something. You know, hundreds of years later, they find the bodies of children in holes in the ground because the parents couldn't get to them before the landslide hit them. So you've got all these different weird things in history. But anyway, let's get to the games. Now this is Westness. This is forget about the body. That's female. There's a game here, and it's a game that could be seen as a military game. Female with a game means that the female is actively involved in a male role. So games are male, masculine, female body. She is in a masculine role because she's got the chest set. I hope this doesn't. It's not confusing at all, really. Outside male, female inside. Outside, you're farming, okay. That might also indicate that she's involved in some kind of politics or warfare, and that's what the chess set represents.
So the game is exclusively used by males then? Or females acting as males?
Yes. Because a game throughout history, are masculine things.
So female indoors and is female, she couldn't play a game indoors?
Basically, she's doing a female role. That's how it's seen. Yeah?
They've invented dominoes anyway.
Well, no. Where's the dominoes?
The spots on the slates.
No, those are individual pieces.
No, not them.
That's not a big domino piece.
No, the little white spots.
What, those?
Oh,
Yeah.
They're numbers telling you what they are.
The domino set. How do you know they're numbers? Oh, I'm arguments. It's this hot chocolate I bought in Greg's. I'm going to buy this again.
Well, that's what he looked like.
You're not the only one who got the white
It was
pieces
set
of
like
ham.
that.
Right, let's just move on.
Was it? No. Oh God, Robert.
Oh my goodness.
Was it set like that when he found it? It was set like that, was it?
Well, obviously with all soil and stuff, and that's the approximate positions. Yeah, that's right. It's likely it would have been set on a wooden board as well, but obviously that's decayed away. It's a slight digression, so we'll move on quickly. But the other indication that she's doing a masculine role other than having a game there is that she's got a bow and arrow there. Okay, they don't belong to a dad. Bow and arrow, and obviously all that's portraying the role in society that she had. We've got lots to go through today, but wanted to show you this. This is from 4,700 years ago. This is Hexie, and this is representative of ancient Egyptians playing a game known as Hounds and Jackals. And it's an interesting game where the aim of the two people playing it is to get to the underworld. And the people who get to the underworld first are the winners of the game. It's the board game in the Tomb of Tutankhamun, and it's called Bingo. That's the one.
I thought it was Camden.
There it is. I've called it Senate today. Senate. Yeah, it's Hounds and Jackals. So it's who gets to the underworld first. That's basically what the game is about. It's a board game that was in the tomb of Tutankhamun. Okay. So I just didn't want to just do British stuff or European stuff. We're doing loads of Bulgarian stuff today as well, which is great. This is, forget about the stuff on the edge, but what they're doing now is bringing these board games, they're computerizing them. There was a board game in Mayan civilization as well, which hopefully we'll get on to talking a little bit about. Right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to go on to my notes, and we're going to go, we've done all that there. I'm just going to get where I need to be, not that, and it's build faults. Oh, there they are. Now, hopefully we'll be able to get through all that. I'm not sure we will. But now we've given a nice introduction, let's look at this. Now, a few nice bits of details. Whether you can see it or not, I'll just read it out anyway. The Lewis chessmen, as we've already mentioned, otherwise known as the Ugg chessmen, named after the bay where they were found, are a group of distinctive chess pieces from about the 1100s, approximately 1,000 years old, and they were found alongside other gaming pieces. So whoever had these was probably some kind of trader, but they deliberately hid them nevertheless. Most of which are carved in walrus ivory, as we've said. Some are made of whalebone, discovered in 1831 on Lewis on the Outer Hebrides, Scotland. They may constitute some of the few complete surviving medieval chess sets, over 1,000 years old. Although it is not clear if a set, basically what it is, that it looks like the guy was trading these pieces rather than having a complete set with him, or her. When found, the hoard contained 93 artifacts, 78 chess pieces, 14 table men, which are just round little counters for another game, and a belt buckle. Today, 82 pieces are owned and usually exhibited by the British Museum in London. And the remaining 11 are at the National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh. Now, the wonderful Nicola Sturgeon, who's wonderful, she's campaigned to get all these pieces back to Edinburgh, and I think that's where they belong. These are chess pieces. They're very significant to Scottish society. They're on display in London, which I think is wrong, and they should be on display in Edinburgh, all of them as a complete collection, not having 11 there and 82 there. Just put them all together. But that's a political thing there.
I noticed 14 tables there. What does that mean?
Just little figures, just little square, just little round.
So the squares are put together to make a board then?
Oh no, table men. They're just little pieces, like drafts. That's what they are.
For some of the quick game.
Yeah, quick game. Now, it's said. I know you probably can't read this, and it's a bit blurry, so focus on me. It's said that the figures themselves may have originated in Trondheim in Norway. And anyone who knows their Second World War, they will know that Trondheim was a very important locality in the Second World War in Norway. Some suggest they could actually come from other countries. Some say that they may be from Iceland, but they think they're from Trondheim and originated there and got all the way to the Outer Hebrides of Scotland because they found a piece in Trondheim that is very similar to those in the chess set. That looks like it was not completed. Looks like it was being made in Trondheim rather than it was a trading piece. It's also, lots of the carvings are very similar to the carvings that can be found in stone at Trondheim Cathedral. and it's said that lots of the designs follow similar designs of artifacts that have actually been found in Trondheim as well. Some people believe that they originate in Iceland. And we think we've even got the name of the person who carved them, a certain Margret the Android from Iceland, but we don't really know that. But it's likely that they're destined for some wealthy family or people with a little bit of money in the Hebrides or somewhere in Ireland. But the real another story of them being found. The modern discovery. The chessmen, this is the other story of the chessmen's discovery, but I seem to like mine better. The chessmen were discovered in early 1831 in a sandbank at the head of Camas Uig. It's a headland on the west coast of the Isle of Lewis, the Outer Hebrides. There are various local stories concerning them, but Malcolm Sprout MacLeod, there you go, well it is, it's written here, Malcolm Sprout MacLeod, that's his real name. You thought I was making it up, didn't you? You all did, all of you did.
It's a nickname.
Sprout.
He was short.
I don't know, Sprout MacLeod, from the nearby township of Penny Donald, you couldn't make this up, could you? Discovered the trove in a small stone kist in a dune, exhibited them briefly in his byre, and sold them on to Captain Roderick Rear. One reported detail that it was a cow that actually unearthed the stash. Is generally discounted. After the Isle of Lewis was purchased by a Sir James Matheson in 1844, Malcolm Sprout MacLeod and his family were evicted and the district was transformed into sheep farms. Couldn't make this up. Now, the weird thing about this whole story of the 93 figures, you know, I like my little bit of a story because it makes a little bit more sense. You know, he's wandering along and there was a little bit of earth away and you could see these little figures. He brought his wife along and she thought he was a loon. But the other thing as well is it makes me think that maybe not all of them were recovered. You know, who's to say that Malcolm actually sort of said that it was, you know, there could have been many more. There could have been hundreds of these things. But what we've got surviving is really good, that we've got 93 of these examples surviving today, which is great. But there is something I've missed out, is loads of detail. So we've got walrus ivory and whale teeth that they're being carved out of. Now this is it. This is a breakdown of these figures. Now, there are 93 figures altogether, but only 78 are actually chess pieces. So here we go. And they're all different sizes as well, so they don't constitute one set, okay? So here we go. The 78 pieces, in an average chess set, there are four. In an average chess set, there are four. There are four bishops. There were 16 altogether found from Lewis. In an average chess set, there are only 2 queens. They found 8. There are only 2 kings. They found 8 kings. 15 knights. And there are only 4 knights in a chess set. And there are only 4 rooks. And they found 12. In an average chess set, there are 16 pawns. And they found 19. So this must constitute an array of chess sets. They believe altogether there are probably about 5 different chess sets represented here. The heights of the pawns themselves vary between 3 centimeters and 5 centimeters in height, but the bigger pieces vary between 7 and 10 centimeters. So these are chunky figures. I actually play chess, and to be honest with you, figures that big are just a bit too much. You just want to go like this and just move them around. Yeah, but bigger figures are a bit more. Probably for people that just want them for ornamental purposes. And the pawns themselves are much smaller and more little draft pieces rather than carved out figures. Little bit of detail here. The knights are mounted on rather diminutive horses and are shown holding spears and shields. Those spears and shields are typically Swedish looking. The rooks, which would be the castle in a normal game of chess, as standing soldiers or warders, holding shields and swords. 4 of the rooks are shown as wild-eyed berserkers biting their shields with battle fury. Okay? So they're ready to go into battle. I think it's the same as what I feel. When I'm driving along, right, and there's a queue of traffic, and the car stops, and I want to get somewhere, I bite the wheel. Is that the same? I'm biting hold of the wheel thinking, you bastards, I want to go. Some pieces bore traces of red stain when found, indicating that red and white were the distinguishing colours of the 2 sides. And lots of other things different. Scholars have observed that to the modern eye, the figured pieces, with their bulging eyes and glum expressions, have a distinct comical character. This is especially true of the single rook, with a worried sideways glance. Go on, do a worried sideways glance, Bill, towards... No, that way. That's not really worried, is it? And the berserkers biting their shields. Go on, Dorothy.
Why did you pick on me to bite?
No, I want you to get a book and put your teeth over it. Go on.
Exactly. Why can't I ask for it?
Go on. Go on. That's more like it. Oh, I like it. That's enough. You've done that bit. And irresistibly comic to a modern audience. It is believed, however, that the comic or sad expressions were not intended or perceived as such by the makers, to whom these images instead displayed strength, ferocity, or, in the case of the queens, who hold their heads and a hand and seemingly pensive expression, contemplation, repose, and possibly wisdom. Dorothy, you could do that for us.
What?
Do the pensive expression. Pensive.
I'm not very clear.
Oh, look, we'll show you what you've got to do. You've got to show everybody else.
Nobody can see me because I'm only facing you.
Oh, all right. Right, Dorothy, you've got to do this. Go on. Bingo.
What's a pensive look?
There you go. There's a woman like that. Go on like this.
Oh, like this?
Yeah, go on. Like
Well,
that.
that might be a sign. Yeah.
You can't really do it, can you?
No, I never have time to do a bloody pensive look.
Contemplating, yeah, there you go. And there's a king and a bishop and a partridge in a pear tree. So there you go. So anyway, let's move on. Now, Michelle said to me, right, we've done the Lewis chess things now. We're going to do another game type thingy. If this is, here we go. Amazing artifacts. This 14,000-year-old toy might be the world's first animation dating to 14,000 years ago. On basically the world's first animation, they got something just bigger than a £2 coin. On both sides, there's an animal, a deer on both sides, and there's a hole through it. When mounted, and it's turned rapidly, the deer looks like it's running.
Oh, the string through.
Yeah, that's right.
You wind the string. And then
Yeah, that's right. And it's said that they discovered that if you thread a string through the hole and spin it, you've basically got the world's first animation. Film lovers were quick to point out that this could be the world's first animation. In it, archaeologists argue that children are often overlooked in the study of prehistory. Because, we don't really think of children in prehistory. It's all about the adults. But maybe instead of being a ritualistic item, the children may have actually used these things, or even adults. But the point being is there's little nuancial details about the past. It really helps you understand that these are very close to us in human stakes. So thanks to Michelle, she said you've got to use this one. And it's not the only one. Lots of these have been found. These examples from the Pyrenees, where looks like you've got some kind of auroch on this one and some kind of auroch on this one, and these little holes through them. You've got another image that is slightly different on the other side. So when you sort of spin it with a bit of string through that hole, you get some kind of toy-like animation. You can say that this is not really a game, but maybe it was a game.
That was a fun.
What's that?
That was a fun with that was we crane them to make colours, and then when they twisted it, it was like.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they went. Yeah. And it also used to whistle. It used to make a funny noise with the
They go,
string.
Yeah, but you didn't have any shops when you were a child, so you must have used ochre from a cave.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
could.
saying we had hours of fun. And we used to do our washing on stones down the river.
Oh, they still do that in the Rhondda Valley, don't they, Malcolm?
Hey,
Not from the Rhondda Valley. No.
Which valley are you from, then?
Aberdare, I keep telling you.
I know you do. I just trying to wind you up.
Really?
The Taff River goes through it, doesn't it? Aberdare.
Huh?
I thought the Taff River goes through Aberdare, didn't it?
Yeah, Merthyr. Oh, you know.
Isn't that in another valley? It's not part. Isn't it part of the Rhondda Valley?
What?
Aberdare.
RCT, no?
It's I forgot. It's part of the lower. It's part of the small Rhondda.
An RCT.
Yeah.
You see Rhondda separate to the Cannon Valley.
Yeah.
Separate to
That's right.
Taffeedy, wasn't it?
That's right. So Merthyr, yeah, Merthyr. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
I'm just winding you up. I love winding you up, Malcolm.
He likes winding people up.
Were you sure you're not from the Maesteg Valley then? They're a bit common there. Oh, by the way, in Maesteg, nobody ever gets their cars nicked. It's Barry that they get their cars nicked.
Very true.
That's what he reckons. On all the trips we've ever done, Bill said, I'm not parking my car in Barry because it might get nicked.
Well, that's the ability of this Barry.
Are they?
Yes, so the rest of them not far to go.
Oh, that's terrible. Are they really building a new prison in Barry?
No.
Oh, right, I thought they were.
Actually.
It's a long way for Barry people to go, isn't it? They'll have to run a regular bus. Anyway, this is one that really interested me when I was thinking about games. When they found the body of this Swedish Viking woman over 100 years ago, because she had a sword in there, an axe, and because she had a game as well, okay, which she had. But she was cradling these pieces. They immediately thought it was a bloke, because women wouldn't have had games, and they wouldn't have had swords, and they wouldn't have had axes, and they definitely wouldn't have had a limb structure of a chunky bone structure. The women just weren't like that, right? But naturally, these are Swedish women. They're another category all unto themselves. Despite the fact, now this is interesting, despite the fact that strong women warriors like Wonder Woman and Lady Bryony from the Game of Thrones are finally becoming more of a fixture in popular culture, it's not easy to forget how rare these figures actually were in historical society. For centuries, and in almost all societies, except for one, men were at the forefront of battle, while women remained behind to take care of the home. However, it seems the Viking era Sweden may have been the exception to that rule, and way ahead of its time as far as feminism is concerned. Recently, archaeologists of Sweden have discovered that the body that they thought a century ago was male was in fact a woman. So all the archaeologists have done, they've thought, right, there's a sword in there, there's a shield in there, there's a picture of Lloyd George, it's got to be the burial of a man. It's actually a woman, somewhere around the age of about 30, 170 centimeters in height. Aside from the complete warrior equipment, buried along with her, a sword, an axe, a spear, armor-piercing arrows, a battle knife, shield, and 2 horses. She also had a board game in her lap. Now, it's really interesting that the board game is significant. You can see they've done a little bit of a reconstruction there, and they're showing something in her lap. And the board game, or more of a war planning game, used to try out battle tactics and strategies, which indicates she was a powerful military leader. She most likely planned, led, and took part in many battles.
That's where the word battle axe comes from.
Yeah, it certainly comes into play when you're in the room. Yeah, that could be the battle axe. Yeah.
Is it only in like the Viking Society that the men and women were classed in reversal roles, whether they were inside or outside? I was thinking mainly like when
Well, actually, this whole thing isn't really sweeping, right? And I haven't really elaborated much. I've given day schools on Roman women, and very, very rarely did Roman women actually have much of a status. However, Anglo-Saxon women, Dorothy, good, top marks, I did have a little bit more status than Roman women, for example. And when you look at Boudica, something else is going on there. The Boudica rebellion is the name given for the whole rebellion, and not just particularly one woman. But I cannot deny that women would have had a great influence in the Boudican rebellion in AD 60 and AD 61. It was the very nature that women were saying, actually, we in our society are treated with a little bit more respect than Roman women, contemporary in Britain. So you would have had a female in an Iron Age village in Britain in AD 60 saying, actually, I've got a little bit more going for me than you Roman women, right? And I think it was a great slight on the Romans that they were having to face women, and not just men. And I think that the Romans found that really difficult, because we know in Viking Society, say for example, just do a little bit of play acting. Now you're sat on the seat, Elaine, right? Malcolm's sitting alongside you, Bill's there, right? I'm walking down the road, right? And I get your eye, right? I get your eye. I just wander off. Right? You could look, not your husband, right? If Bill had seen this, right? You could turn around and say to Bill, right? He looked at me in a strange way. I want him to be stoned to death, and I could be stoned to death on your word. We're not interested in what Malcolm's saying, right? Malcolm's annoyed anyway, right? But I could be put to death on your word. Just keep Malcolm out of it. Just get Bill and the boys to stone me to death, and that's exactly what Viking Society was about. Women did not put up with it, and that's really important, very important. Going back to this, the idea that she's a powerful leader, battle tactics and strategies. She most likely planned, led, and took part in battles, which is extraordinary. But when we think of Viking society, it's not extraordinary at all. It's commonplace. In fact, it's mundane. It's as boring as anything, because women had the status in Viking society. And when I say it was naturalized, it was normal for that role structure to take place in Viking society. That's what happened, and that's what's important. So when we get to the likes of Joan of Arc in the 1400s, Joan of Arc is a figurehead of an army, and the men don't like it, because you've got this short little woman who's leading an army who can fight. But I think what's being said there is that Joan of Arc steps forward. It wasn't that there weren't women like Joan of Arc, but Joan of Arc this time stood forward and actually said, well, I can fight. There are loads of women that can fight, and you men know that they can fight, but I can actually fight. I am going to fight now, right? And that's exactly what Boudica said. But in Viking society, I can do whatever I want if I'm a woman, and that's the difference. It's no big deal in Viking society, where it is a big deal everywhere else. When the grave was initially excavated, they thought that all these things were actually manly, but they weren't. They're feminine, and the game was really important. They started to analyze the cheekbones, the hip bones. They did DNA, osteoanalysis, and then they finally worked out that this was a female warrior and not a male warrior. Hence, the biological sex of the individual was taken for granted when they excavated it. They didn't realize that they were looking at Viking society, as was written about. But nobody believed those Icelandic sagas about women having the upper hand in Viking society. Though some Viking women buried with weapons are known, a female warrior of this importance has never been determined, and Viking scholars have been reluctant to acknowledge, simply because it's every single body that's found with armor. They always say it's male, every single time. That stereotypical thing, which we now know is wrong. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take a break, and after the break, we're going to do this. Are there any questions? No.
What they found in that grave was something like whisk, like a woodland whisk.
Where was this?
Like a game called strategy.
Yeah, that's right.
And
You're risking your pawns and so on. Yeah, exactly. That comes in.
There was a good play on Carl, there was a good radio play on BBC Three last Sunday for the last of all songs, which was Icelandic saga.
You're joking!
Yes, and I recorded it.
I don't listen to Radio 3, I listen to 4 and 4 Plus.
Radio 3 on Sunday, 9 o'clock.
I'd have liked to listen to that. Right. Malcolm.
Right, boss.
Who's going to win the rugby on Saturday? You know my mate is Joshua Navidi, don't you?
I asked a question.
If Joshua Navidi's playing, my mate, number 7, I am personal friends with him. I go to his house, and if Joshua Navidi's playing, it's going to be Wales.
What I tried to do, Carl, I tried to make a copy of that thing.
It's not going to be easy for you, you know it's not. I'm not talking to you, Bill, because you've got a big nose.
All wrestlers have got big noses. In fact, the Chinese have all wrestlers have big noses.
Really?
Yeah.
Malcolm, apparently you've got to call me Big Nose and I've got to call you Big Nose. That's what you just said.
Sorry?
Apparently Bill said the Chinese call all Westerners Big Nose.
I've got a big nose, yeah.
I've got a bigger nose than you.
No, you've got a small nose, like me. No, this is called a big nose.
My nose is bigger than yours.
All right.
Do you know what they used to call me in school?
No, Bill.
Big Nose Lang.
No, I thought it was Comrade Carl. I never had to last it, Comrade Carl.
Classic.
So I was true, alright?
A man in your life.
Why? Who says that?
Bill.
You've been talking about me.
Well, me and Bill.
What makes you think that I need a man in my life?
Oh, you're defensive now.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you think I need a man in my life? Or my mouth, I said.
You're always looking.
What do you mean?
Oh, right. Let's just move on. Right, an ancient board game.
I said it by mistake. Why do you think I need?
Because you're always mothering me.
Well, that's because you're a little boy.
I walked into that, didn't I? An ancient board game found in archaeological excavations in northern Bulgaria, and as you can see, you've got a nice piece of stone. And the interesting thing about board games is they always follow this pattern with a grid. and little pieces on them. And this is obviously a museum piece, but you can obviously see that they're using polished stones, they're using bits of Roman Samian ware, and glass and so on. And there's a nice little bit of a story in the background here. And Bulgaria is that last hidden frontier of the Roman world that we're starting to learn a lot about, but unfortunately lots of it is being destroyed as well. Bulgaria is one of the only countries that has metre-deep ploughshares that are deliberately used by farmers to go across archaeological sites, and behind them people follow with buckets to put all the artefacts in. And that was reported last year, actually. So anyway, but they are pretty good with lots of their artifacts. So here we go. Somebody mentioned a dice. Now, what is the correct word for this? A die or a dice? That's why I wasn't corrected by Kathy today, because I kept on saying die.
And what does it feel like you're doing?
You get D-I-C-E, die.
Yeah.
One. Singular.
Dice is two.
Yes.
Right.
Or dicey.
No, I was thinking of what they found on the Mary Road.
Ah, the little wooden dice, the little bone dice, exactly. And you need to exhibition presenting. They're really into their games and what they're displaying. So what we got, we've got lots of games being found in Bulgaria. We've got lots of pieces, lots of die, game boards, and this interesting point here. This is why we're doing this. That last but one paragraph. The desire for games and entertainment emerged as early as the dawn of human civilization. So if you're going to study human beings, you need to study some of the things they were doing. And it's not just about hunting all the time. And this reflects in its own way, not just the occupation, but also the spiritual, cultural, and even aesthetic needs of the people. So they may have been doing it for fun. They may have been doing it for tactical reasons, all sorts of different reasons. So games are really important. Now, those little things with the holes in would be a little game of knuckle bones. Can everyone remember playing knuckle bones when you were a child? Because I do.
What, jacks, you mean?
Yeah, knuckle bones, jacks. Yeah.
Roll up and take
Yeah. Well, when we were in school, we actually used to use little knuckle bones, right? None of you can remember this. And also, can any of you remember, right, talking about games? Now, no word of a lie, we used to have a man in the street. Every time a horse used to go down the street, and drop-ins used to go on the road.
They pick them up.
No, he used to go out, he used to get a handful of these drop-ins, used to squeeze them into a ball, right, really, really tight, and he used to dry them out, and then he used to give them to us to play with.
But you from Bulgaria,
No, I'm serious. No, can anyone remember doing that? I'm not laughing. Oh no, this isn't funny now. That's what we used to do, honestly. He used to dry them out, and we used to play with them. Yeah, the balls, dung balls.
Well, that's like you took the job away from the dung beetle, then, didn't you? No, the men used to.
Why is it none of you have done any of these things that we used to do in Barry? But you haven't played with cow dung, horse crap.
No.
Too many gardens in the street.
No, they fight over it. If the horse went up the street, they'd be out with a bucket.
I did have a fight with somebody over a ball once.
No,
And they don't have it when you have one landed on you.
We had nice run of beans in us because we had the horse.
Oh.
Another thing they used to run out with buckets of water when two dogs were stuck together. They'd be throwing. I couldn't make out what they were doing. I was only little. But they were old, bloody dogs. I was chucking all this water over them.
Would they uncouple?
I don't know. I was sent in. They catch hold of my ear and take me in. I never found out. I never found out. But it's something that happens, I think.
But I'm afraid the bits would be rather. How can one put it?
Sorry. Anyway, sorry about that, but I just thought it was another activity.
I have no. What were you saying?
It's another activity we did in Australia when the top season and the skipping rope had gone.
Right, I was just talking about games, right? And it's just gone downhill with a dog. The ancient board game items, as you can see, displayed in the new exhibition, the strangles, which is basically the knuckle bones, were derived from carcasses of goat, sheep, or maybe cattle, and were additionally polished and processed. So these were a tossing game that goes way back, and we find these on archaeological sites. So we got lots of these being excavated and found, and they belong to sites which go back 6,500 years ago. So obviously the oldest board game items would be a game of knuckle bones, and they've got lots of these on display. And now another interesting point here is this: as in any gambling game, because technically this is what games are all about, it's gambling, right? As much as I want to think it's not gambling, right? Michelle's daughter Roxy, whenever she comes in, she says, "Oh, let's have a game of chess," and I say, "Oh, well, a game of chess," and every time she loses. So I've let her, I've sort of let her win twice, and I thought it's just no, I shouldn't be doing that. Anyway, Michelle has a go at me. She said you shouldn't let her lose all the time. You should let her win, otherwise she's just going to give up. And I said, well, every time we get to the end of a game, and obviously I won, I don't actually say, oh, I won, look how wonderful I am. I say, well, it's been a really good game. Maybe you should have done this and that, and then we break up the game and whatever. But the 2 times that she's won, she's got the same attitude as me. It's a game. We're not gambling. We're not being competitive, right? But the reality of the matter is, games are competitive, no matter how much I want to gloss them up. And there was cheating in the ancient board games and all these different games as well. For example, a dice from the Roman period has lead placed inside it, so that it always falls on a certain side, which of course is known to the person who forged it. Cheating has always gone with gambling, but I do not want to think about the consequences if his mates found out, particularly if it was in a legionary barrack. Knuckle bones were also used for playing throughout antiquity, discs and board games. The whole of society would have been connected with games. And, whenever we mention games, don't we? We always think of children, but no, these are adults. And actually, I want to make another point here. I know Elaine and Malcolm, you were in here last week, but we had a lecture about the Roman general Agricola. And we talked about a Roman fort known as Inch Tuthill in Scotland. And they found millions of nails stacked up there. Anyway, the 2 conclusions that we come to, the reason why the Romans left the nails there, after forcing their soldiers to bang them out of a piece of wood, whilst they gently took the fort down, was to give the troops something to do. And the other outcome was that it was the wrong type of iron. But what I'm trying to say is, throughout history, people have needed to find things to do, and board games is a way of passing time, as much as banging nails out of a bit of wood is passing time. It's all about passing time. This is what games are about. The ancient die were made of bones, wood, stone, or metal. 2 types of die games are known. As I sneeze. Thank you. With a cup or on a board. Thank you. The 6-sided dice with the numbers from 1 to 6 was widespread. You also had dice with rounded sides and rounded corners. Some dice with 6 sides would not have numbers on them at all. They would have figures. Dice can be used for entertainment purposes, gambling, passing the time, fortune telling, chance, all different things. Games are important levelers of passing time. Years ago, I put £1,000 on an England football match. And guess what? The English side won that football match. But they scored a goal after the 90th minute. So I lost all that £1,000. £1,000 on one football game. I put £1,000 on a football game. I actually won, but when I found out William Hill, they said they scored the goal after the 90th minute, right? So I lost £1,000 quid. Yeah.
What game was it? What match?
I think it was England versus some unknown country. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. The point of, oh, can I just finish? The reason why I put that £1,000 bet on was because I was bored.
Oh, I see.
Oh, I see.
Oh, well.
Do you want money to throw away?
No, I don't have money to throw away. You're missing my plumbing point. It was a game. Oh God. Oh God. This anyway it was years ago. All right.
All right. Subs have now gone down to £4 a session. So we're helping you not gamble.
This was 10 years ago. So shut up. Anyway, so the whole point is passing time. That's really important because I don't know if it was one of you guys. Oh, guys, do you know there's somebody? Do you know there's somebody in my Roost class? He said, if anyone ever calls me a guy in this class, I'm walking out. Well, that's all right. Then you've paid. Anyway, the point. Oh, then I'll charge you for leaving early. Or geisha boys. Oh my God! I've lost the chain of thought now. But anyway, exactly. Games with pieces moving on a board were also very popular in ancient times, as we know. Obviously, made out of lots of material. And what we do find on archaeological sites is that we find bits of tile or bits of pottery that have been cut out and have been polished. And they're used as pieces. You've seen these in museums with me, haven't you, Bill, in places like Orkney? And it's playing games is a really popular pastime. You know, we can't think of our ancestors continually working in a field, because you can't continually work in a field when you haven't got enough lighting inside your house, or you haven't got enough lighting outside. So a game, if you've got a tiny bit of light coming outside, perfect to pass the time. And we see this associated with lots of Roman military sites. And the point I was going to make before I mentioned Roos and Guys was that when you look at somewhere like Vindolanda, what they find is they find the Vindolanda tablets, the thousands of Vindolanda tablets that they've now found. And they basically say, oh, you find things, I am so bored stiff, there's absolutely nothing to do up here. Or you find, we're so bored, we're going to have a party, right? But what you don't find is we're bored, but we're actually passing the time playing board games. But even though we don't have that written down, we've got loads of evidence of board games at Vindolanda. Well, that would be a good analogy. So what they do find is that, particularly in places like Bulgaria and Roman sites, this idea of just marking out a board with lines and having little pieces is an age-old game. And a game that I used to play years ago, Pente, was based on an ancient Greek game. So you'd have a big board, and you'd have a stack of bits of glass this side and a stack of bits of glass that side. And you'd have to try and complete a row. And if you were able to get a row of 5, then the other side couldn't do anything about it. Yeah, but if they could sort of put a figure on either side without you knowing, somewhere in the game, then they capture those 4 pieces before you get to 5. Similar to Connect 4. But can you see it's quite strategic? And hence why we're linking these games with Viking Women. And that if they've got a game in there, they're using their strategic mindset. And actually, let's put a massive compliment towards women. If you do have a game within a grave with a woman, it means that she's got pretty good intelligence to actually play the game in the first place. And I think that's the other thing we're trying to say as well. Games are a sign of intelligence and intellect. And now, thank God, we've started to find them with women. We can now start to put this whole sense of gaming and everything into perspective. And I think that's what we're trying to do now, particularly with these burials. You know, lots of coloured pieces, and obviously You can look at that piece there. Doesn't that look very, very familiar to one of those draft pieces? And this is from 2,000 years ago. I used to have a draft set like that, a wooden draft set, okay? The pieces were exactly like that, where you had a slight sort of groove, exactly the same. Moving on. Now, we haven't got a massive amount of time, so I'm going to go through this now. This is a really interesting game. We don't really understand it. It's a Roman game. We've got lots of references to it, but we don't really know how it was played. It's a grid. It's very similar to Pente, and it's known as Ludus Latrinum Colorum. Latrinum Colorum. And this game itself could be said to resemble drafts or chess, more like drafts, and it's a proper Roman game, which was endemic through the Roman world. We've got people writing. We've got people writing about this name. There we go. Ludus Lantrum Colorum. So that's the Roman name. Very similar to drafts. If you've written that down, good. And it's a game itself. Interesting enough that only 2 people could play. Now I sat down and thought about this. I thought actually, if you're a Roman soldier and you want to play a game, chess would be a really stupid game to play, because you get distracted in chess, you know, you've lost the game. But with drafts, it's quite quick. So a game like this would be perfect for a Roman soldier or anybody who's very busy. A Greek writer describes this game. This is before the Roman period. The game played with many pieces is a board with spaces disposed among lines. Okay, among lines. So basically, lines and spaces in between. Typical board game. The board is called the city, and each piece is called a dog. The pieces are of 2 colours, and the art of the game consists in taking a piece of one colour by enclosing it between 2 of the other colour. And that game itself, the description is very similar to a game I used to play called Pente. There's a little description of this game. I read it today. It didn't seem to make much sense, but I won't do it. But it's just discussing the fact of using this game in a military way. It said that it uses terms in this game, the battle rages, with cut-up soldiers being captured by the other side. And the big difference between this game and drafts is quite simple. In a game of drafts, you've got X amount of pieces either side, right? This game, and that's all set up on the board. With this game, which we'll say again, Latrinum Colorum. With this game, you've got like 100 pieces here, 100 pieces there, and you answer the game and you take them away. That's the difference between this and chess, really.
How did they establish this, and how did they find out this was a game? Because if it's a board game, the board has got...
Right, because... Oh, all right, then I'll read this out. An account of a game of Latrinum Culi, which is otherwise known as Latrinum Colorum. Here's a description. I'm going to try and make sense of this. This is from the period after the birth of Christ. We've got descriptions and we've got the pieces, but not necessarily the boards. When you are weary with the weight of your studies, if perhaps you are pleased not to be inactive, but to start games of skill, in a more clever way, you vary the moves of your counters on the open board, and wars are fought out by a soldiery of glass, so that at one time a white counter traps black, and at another a black traps white. Yet what counters has not fled from you? What counter gave way when you were its leader? What counter, though doomed to die, has not destroyed its foe? Your battle line joins combat in 1,000 ways. That counter, flying from the pursuer, itself makes a capture. Another, which stood at a vantage point, comes from a position far retired. This one dares to trust itself to the struggle and deceives an enemy advancing on its prey. That one risks dangerous traps and apparently entrapped itself, counter traps to opponents. So basically one either side, that's what it's saying. Two pieces there. So you put one that side, and you trap it. This one is advantage to greater things, so that when the formation is broken, it may quickly burst into columns, and so that when the rampart is overthrown, it's talking really military, it may devastate the closed walls. Meanwhile, however, keenly the battle rages with cut-up soldiers. You conquer with a formation that is full or bereft of only a few soldiers. Each of your hands rattles with its band of captives. Yes, yes. So that's what the game's about. It's about simply having a board. You've got X amount of glass, I've got X amount of glass, and you try to get long lengths, and you're laying it all out, and then it's quite a complicated game when you play it, and it's not as straightforward as it sounds.
That sounded straightforward.
I was going to say that didn't sound straightforward, did it?
Does it sound straightforward, Malcolm?
No.
But that is an original text. Now they believe that all these earlier games either derive from China or may actually derive from Rome. But it's said that the game of chess eventually developed from these early Roman games. They talk about this in 1774. It's said that the historical development of chess may have come from the Roman world, or may have come from India, or the East, or China. When chess came to Germany, the chess term for chess and Czech were born. As a result, Lundus Latrocolorum was often used as a medieval Latin name for chess. So in other words, they believe that the development from this Roman game led directly to chess, because it was a strategic game.
Playing cards come in. What started there?
I think I'm aware that we've got playing cards being used by soldiers in the British Civil War in the 1600s. So we definitely got them being used in the 1700s, because I used to use them when I was a reenactor myself. I used to have a license to fire a gun. I had a firearms certificate, and I had a proper gun, and I used to keep black powder in the house.
Not in the kitchen, I thought.
No, in the shed with the pension.
Next door to the oven, yeah. We used to have a cabinet, an iron cabinet next door to the oven.
He had to keep his wick dry.
Anyway,
Ludo must be, always comes from that. The modern game of board game Ludo,
Chinese checkers.
Yeah.
My
It's all developed, yeah. What I would say quickly is that one thing, Flinders Petrie, when he looked at these, this is really interesting. When Flinders Petrie was looking at these different games in the archaeological record, he would say that games developed in three ways. First, there were games of chance, like card games, dominoes, or backgammon, right? You say those were the earlier games, right? Don't know why you come to this conclusion. Then there were then you got a sense of physical games, like football and tennis and so on. And then you had games of intellect, like chess and drafts. So these games came after the likes of football. This is how he's saying it developed in the human mindset. Whether he's right or wrong, it's difficult to tell. And also, we got lots of examples of Roman games, board games preserved, and lots of the dice preserved, but we haven't got anything as well preserved as this. Bill will recognise that from the tomb of Tutankhamun. Ancient Egyptian games, otherwise known as Senet. Yeah, I'm not good at pronouncing these things. Senet. Board games were a favourite pastime in Egypt, and Senet was the most popular of these. It was played by two people, using an elaborately carved inlaid board, like the one found in Tutankhamun's tomb. The oldest known representation of Senet is a painting from the tomb of Hexie from the year 2686 BC, so over over 4,500 years ago. So, you know, we've got representations. Many actual boards with their counters or throw sticks, knuckle stones, to sort of say where you're going to go next, have survived intact. The game board had 30 squares laid out in 3 rows of 10. Some of the squares had symbols on them, and the path of the counters probably followed a reversed S across the board. So you have to go in an S formation. The game of Senate, the symbols represented either good or bad fortune and affected the play accordingly, otherwise known as hounds and jackals. One person had hounds and the other one had jackals. And where do hounds and jackals wish to go? The underworld. The movement of the counters was decided by throwing 4 two-sided sticks and not dice. Senate means passing and had a religious significance. The aim of each player being to move their pieces around the board and avoiding hazards. Good luck was a blessing from the gods, and the winner was the first to pass into the afterlife by getting all their pieces off the board. And note the afterlife. This has got to be one of the only games where you go to die, but not physically die.
So
You know.
that's safer than bull jumping then, isn't it?
Bull?
Bull jumping.
Bull?
Not bull. Bull.
Yeah, but you don't do bull jumping in your living room, do you? No. A Mayan game known as Bullock or Bull is known from descriptions written down in the 1600s. But we've got a little bit of a we know that there was some kind of Mayan game, and it goes as follows. It's a game of corn, really, and these are the descriptions. And this is what we can work out from the Mayan language and the information, the actual layouts of games and so on. Here we go, Mayan game. But neither can I give you hard evidence that the corn game, as it is now still played by the Mayans, was known to the ancient times. However, there is linguistic evidence that the ancient Mayans used to play games of chance. The name of bull occurs in several Mayan languages and also means to play with dice or die. Sometimes, by extension, it means to lose with gambling. It's a game of losing. There is archaeological evidence that the Mayans knew the square and oval-shaped patoli boards. There are many sites throughout Mayan area where archaeologists found patoli boards carved into floors or benches. So board games carved into something solid, but nothing as portable yet. Anyway, I don't have any thrilling stories about this. Only 3 Mayan manuscripts were safeguarded from the Spanish conquistadors. Up till now, no reference to Mayan board games was found. Of course, there are a few pictures displaying priests throwing corn or seed, maybe as a game or for divination. It's observed that the game could be played by up to 10 people at a time. They placed 25 grains of corns in row. The game lasted for 3 hours, and they played various variants. And this is an ancient game known to the Maya using corn. On that note, I'm going to call it a day. Any questions?
I had the wrong game, I apologise.
I just want to mention this. Yes, just want to mention this. This is a list of scheduled ancient monuments from 2008. This shows the important Roman site on the 5-mile lane marked as a scheduled ancient monument. Cadden, when they removed it from listing in 2016, said they accidentally put it on the list. And it was never a scheduled ancient monument in the first place. So therefore, it can be removed for development.
Oh, it's not good.
So this is what's going on. All I've got to say, guys, none of your archaeological sites are safe in this country anymore. And this is a tactic they are using.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much. And I will see you all next week. Go on, Bill. You've got 7 minutes.
Do you want to take
I'll take it back.
What is Mr. Gove going to do about that then?
Gove?
Oh, that when we stopped balls in the back of your
Gove isn't going to do anything. He's absolutely full of China chicken. Try to get in with the one.
Darcy, put those on here.
About ears of corn.
Ears of corn. Oh, they would use corn to play the game. Of corn. Being you now is playing the Please do. Are you okay? Okay, alright. I can take the back from the shell, okay. What do you want to do with that?
Down there. Thank you. That drink's got sugar in it.
Not much.
Of course, yes.
It's not much. I don't know how much is in it. I can't drink fizzy drinks or anything. The problem is I'm feeling incredibly weak these days because I'm not having any sugar.
I asked him what he told me. He told you to drink. It's got sugar in it, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, not as much as.
Not as much.
Yeah, I was going to.
Up there. I can't have it at all. Well, I not. If I can avoid it, I can't have it. You know what I mean? But the thing is, most practically everything's got sugar in it. You know. If it's got like that drink there's got like 4.5% sugar, so I can have that. I'll just annoy you, Bill. Bill?
Half asleep for the night.
Ready?
Hiya, Alan. Do you want to come back to my place for a good time?
Right. He's on here, that.
Hey, Rob! Rob, come on, get this down. Come on, chop chop.
Oh, hang on.
Come on, man.
Oh.
Come on, pal.
Right,
Put that on there. Put that on there. Put the box on there. On there. Right, go for it. Go.
Oh, you've got stuck in.
George, go for it. Go. Go. We love doing this every week.
I'll let you do it every week.
Just to wind him up.
Wind me up.
No, just to wind you up.
When that doesn't wind me up, not a lot winds me up now.
Wouldn't it be good to be a Londoner? Because I love London town. Hey. I don't. Hang on, back. 10, 20, 30, 40, 45, 46.
You're right.
I'm not talking to you again, Tina? Oh God, we don't talk about Tina. I knew a Tina. Tinas are usually social workers, aren't they? It's usually Tinas or Teresas are social workers. I think they are. You come across loads of Tinas or Teresas? Oh, then I got that wrong, didn't I? Go on, Bill, have a wee. Go on, Bill.